Most men fear crises. I love them, because while the weak sell everything in panic, the strong quietly build empires. The year is 2026, the AI market is in turmoil, and I, John D. Rockefeller, am about to show you why this is one of the best times in history to become extraordinarily rich. In my lifetime, I built the most powerful commercial empire the world had ever known. Standard Oil refined nearly 90% of all the oil produced and sold in America. At the peak of my power, kings and presidents mentioned my name with a mixture of fear, respect, and envy. Many called me a robber baron, a heartless monopolist, and the most hated man in the country. They were wrong about me. I was never cruel for the sake of cruelty. I was simply a man who understood one fundamental, unchanging law of life markets and human nature that the vast majority of people never learn even after they lose everything. Crises are not catastrophes. Crises are the greatest opportunities a truly disciplined man will ever receive in his entire life. Today, in the year 2026, you are standing right at the threshold of exactly such a historic moment. The artificial intelligence market is shaking violently. Technology stocks that only yesterday were considered untouchable and eternal are now swinging wildly like unstable oil wells during a violent storm in Pennsylvania. Investors are in full panic mode. Headlines across the world scream that the great AI bubble has finally burst. Energy companies are desperately rushing to build new power plants and infrastructure, yet they cannot keep pace with the monstrous, insatiable appetite of modern data centers that consume electricity at a scale humanity has never witnessed before. And while millions of people tremble with fear selling their positions and hiding their money, I sit here quietly, and I smile. Because I have seen this exact story unfold many times before. In 1873, America was plunged into one of the worst financial panics in its history. Banks collapsed across the nation, railroads went bankrupt, fortunes that had been built in just a few years evaporated overnight. My competitors in the young oil business were terrified. They sold their refineries and assets for pennies on the dollar, convinced that the entire world was coming to an end. I did the exact opposite. I kept my nerve. I counted every single dollar with cold precision, and I quietly began to buy everything that was worth owning at distressed prices. In 1907, another severe panic struck the country. Even the mighty J.P. Morgan himself came to me seeking help and liquidity. While almost everyone around lost their heads and made emotional decisions, my organization remained calm, disciplined, and strategically ready. When the storm finally passed, Standard Oil emerged not only intact, but significantly stronger and more dominant than ever before. Now the year is 2026, and the same ancient, timeless play is unfolding once again. Only this time the stage is set with artificial intelligence, massive data centers, and the enormous amounts of energy they desperately require. Make no mistake, my friend, this is not the end of the artificial intelligence revolution. This is merely the painful but absolutely necessary cleansing phase that always comes right before the greatest consolidations of wealth and power in any new industry. In the next 30 minutes, I will lay out clearly and without any sugarcoating exactly why this current turmoil represents one of the biggest opportunities of your lifetime, but only if you possess the discipline, the patience, and the cold-blooded calculation required to act decisively while others remain paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. I have walked through many such storms in my life, and I emerged richer and stronger after each one. Tonight I will teach you the exact principles and mindset that allowed me to do it so that you can do the same. Let me take you back to the hard lessons I learned in my own time so you can see the pattern clearly. In 1873, the United States fell into a deep financial panic that lasted for years. Thousands of businesses failed, unemployment soared. People who had been rich just months earlier were suddenly begging for work. In the oil regions of Pennsylvania and the refining centers of Cleveland, fear was everywhere. My competitors watched their refineries lose value by the day. Many of them panicked and sold everything they owned at enormous losses just to get some cash in hand. They believed the world as they knew it was over. I saw the same events very differently. While they were selling, I was carefully studying the numbers. I looked at every refinery that came up for sale. I calculated exactly how much it would cost to operate it more efficiently than anyone else. I kept large cash reserves when money was still relatively easy to borrow. And when prices hit rock bottom, I started buying, quietly and methodically. Not because I enjoyed watching others suffer, but because I understood that panic always creates extraordinary bargains for those who keep their emotions under control. The same thing happened again in 1907. The banking system was on the verge of total collapse. Credit froze. Even some of the largest institutions in New York were hours away from failure. J.P. Morgan personally asked for my assistance. I provided liquidity, but I did it with clear eyes and cold calculation. I knew that when the panic ended, the companies that had stayed disciplined would control a much larger share of the market. My Standard Oil did not just survive those crises, it grew stronger because we refused to follow the crowd. We maintained strict efficiency. We cut every unnecessary cost. We kept our balance sheet clean. And most importantly, we never allowed fear to dictate our decisions. Human nature has not changed even a little bit in the last 150 years. Greed inflates bubbles. Fear triggers crashes. Euphoria makes intelligent men act like fools. And only iron discipline separates those who build lasting empires from those who get destroyed by the storm. Now fast forward to 2026. The artificial intelligence boom of the last few years followed the exact same pattern I saw many times in oil. Billions upon billions were poured into data centers' specialized chips and ever larger models. Valuations soared to ridiculous levels. Anyone who questioned the endless growth was called outdated or stupid. Everyone believed this time is different.
But now the music has stopped.
Data centers are consuming electricity at a pace that is shocking even the most experienced energy experts. Training. One advanced AI model can require power equivalent to thousands of households. Running inference for millions of users every single day multiplies that demand many times over. Grids in several major regions are already struggling. New power projects are delayed by years. Prices for electricity and power capacity are rising sharply. Companies that raised money expecting endless cheap capital are suddenly facing a much harsher reality. This is the moment when weak hands sell everything. This is the moment when strong hands prepare to buy.
And that, my friend, is exactly where the real game begins.
Now let us look directly at what is really happening in 2026 without any fashionable nonsense or optimistic delusions. The artificial intelligence boom that everyone celebrated for years has run straight into physical reality. Data centers have become true monsters of energy consumption. According to recent projections, global data center electricity usage is rapidly approaching or even surpassing 1,000 terawatt-hours per year. That is roughly equal to the entire electricity consumption of Japan, one of the world's largest economies. In the United States alone, which still hosts the majority of the most powerful AI infrastructure, data centers are expected to consume between 6-7% and 12% of all national electricity by 2028. Some serious forecasts speak of a potential power shortfall of 9 to 10 gigawatts or more in key regions. Training a single frontier AI model can now demand several gigawatts of continuous power. Everyday inference, the constant processing of queries from hundreds of millions of users, multiplies this hunger dramatically. The electrical grid simply cannot keep up with this explosive demand. New power plant projects face years of delays due to permitting issues, supply chain problems, and local opposition. In many areas, utilities have dramatically increased prices for new power contracts. The cost of securing reliable electricity has become one of the biggest barriers in the entire AI industry. At the same time, investors who poured money into AI companies expecting endless growth are finally asking the uncomfortable question: where is the real sustainable profit? Many large enterprises are enthusiastically testing AI tools, but they hesitate to sign massive long-term contracts because the clear, massive financial returns are still not obvious to everyone. As a result, stock prices of many high-flying AI companies have already fallen sharply, some by 30, 40, or even 50% from their peaks. This is the classic moment I have seen repeatedly throughout my life. In the oil industry of the 1870s, wells were gushing everywhere, prices crashed to almost nothing, and hundreds of refineries went bankrupt. Everyone called it a disaster. I called it opportunity. The same pattern is repeating now. The weak and over-leveraged players are being shaken out. The companies and individuals who loaded up on debt during the euphoria are starting to crack under pressure.
But here is the most important truth I want you to burn into your mind.
This turmoil is not the death of artificial intelligence. It is the necessary, painful cleansing that always happens before the next great wave of consolidation and wealth creation. The technology itself is not going away. What is going away is the easy money, the reckless speculation, and the inefficient players. When the dust settles, the survivors who controlled their costs maintained strong balance sheets and secured critical resources. Especially energy will emerge far more powerful than before. Just as I once controlled the refining and transportation of oil, the winners of this cycle will be those who control the new critical bottlenecks: reliable, affordable power data infrastructure and vertical integration in high-value industries.
This is where the real fortunes of the next decade will be made.
Enough with the diagnosis. Now comes the most important part, my personal playbook for dominating this exact type of crisis. If I were building my fortune again in 2026, here is exactly what I would do, step by step, with cold precision. First, keep your powder dry. While the crowd is panicking and selling assets at discounted prices, you must maintain strong cash reserves or highly liquid positions. I never went into any major crisis fully leveraged. I always kept significant dry powder. In times of fear, cheap credit disappears overnight. The man with cash becomes the king. Do not max out your borrowing capacity now. Preserve liquidity like it is gold. Second, buy infrastructure, not hype. Stop chasing glamorous AI startups with beautiful presentations and no profits. Focus on the real foundations. Energy and physical infrastructure. I would aggressively look at companies involved in power generation, especially nuclear, including small modular reactors, natural gas for quick deployment, and long-term power purchase agreements. Whoever can reliably supply electricity to data centers in the coming years will be able to name their own price. Energy is the new transportation bottleneck. Control the power, and you control the AI economy. Third, pursue ruthless vertical integration. In my time, I did not just refine oil, I controlled pipelines, transportation, and even the barrels themselves. Today you must aim for the same. Look for or build companies that own multiple layers: data, computing power, energy supply, and specialized applications in high-margin industries such as healthcare, legal, manufacturing, or finance. Vertical AI solutions that solve real expensive problems will survive and dominate. General models will face brutal price competition. Fourth, obsess over efficiency. Like your life depends on it, I saved one single drop of solder per barrel and turned that tiny saving into millions of dollars over time. In the AI world, you must count every single metric with the same obsession: cost per inference, energy consumed per token, cooling efficiency, server utilization rates. Small improvements multiplied across massive scale become enormous advantages. The companies that can deliver intelligence at the lowest possible cost will win. Fifth, exploit your competitors' fear and mistakes. When large players start cutting budgets, canceling projects, and laying off talented people in panic, move in quietly. This is the time to acquire skilled engineers, valuable patents, half-built data center sites, or distressed power contracts at heavily discounted prices. Chaos always creates opportunities for the calm and prepared buyer. Remember this above all: AI is not going away. The current correction is simply washing out the weak. The technology will continue to grow, but the winners will be far fewer and much more powerful than today. Those who act with discipline during this turmoil will look back in 2035 and realize that 2026 to 2027 was the greatest wealth creation window of their lifetime.
But I must be brutally honest with you right now.
Even with all these principles laid out clearly, most people listening to me tonight will still fail to build real wealth during this crisis. And I will tell you exactly why. The first reason is lack of discipline. You want the rewards of a Rockefeller, but you are not willing to live like one. During my rise, I lived modestly while others around me spent lavishly. I reinvested almost every dollar back into the business. Today, many of you want the billionaire lifestyle immediately: expensive cars, luxury watches, and flashy posts on social media. Before you have actually built anything of lasting value, that path leads to ruin. Lifestyle inflation has destroyed more fortunes than market crashes ever did. The second deadly mistake is ego. When I bought out my competitors, I did it quietly and efficiently. I did not celebrate publicly or boast about catching the bottom. True power moves in silence. Today, too many people cannot resist announcing on the internet that they are buying the dip or that they are the next Rockefeller. The moment you start seeking validation from the crowd, you lose the cold calculation needed to win. Ego makes you hold losing positions too long and sell winners too early. The third reason is short-term thinking. Most investors today think in quarters or even weeks. I thought in decades. This current turmoil may last into 2027 or even longer. The weak hands will sell in fear during the next leg down. Only those who can endure the pain and keep buying quality assets at distressed prices will win big. If you cannot stomach volatility for 12 to 24 months, you should not be playing this game at all. The fourth killer is following the crowd. When everyone is euphoric, be afraid. When everyone is terrified, that is when opportunity appears. In 1873 and 1907, the crowd was wrong both at the top and at the bottom. The same is happening again in 2026. The financial media will swing from extreme optimism to extreme pessimism. Do not listen to them. Develop your own independent judgment based on fundamentals, not headlines. And finally, understand this fundamental truth. Progress is often cruel to the inefficient. If an AI company cannot make its economics work because its energy costs are too high or its product does not deliver clear value, the market has every right to let it die. Do not complain about unfairness. Become more efficient. Become indispensable, or get out of the way. These are not gentle suggestions. These are the hard rules that separated me from thousands of men who disappeared during the panics of my era. If you are not willing to adopt this level of discipline and mental toughness, then this crisis will not make you rich. It will simply teach you another expensive lesson. But if you are ready to think and act like a Rockefeller, then the opportunity in front of you is enormous. Let me now give you the deeper strategic picture, the part most people never see. This 2026 crisis is not just another market correction, it is a fundamental shift in the power structure of the entire AI industry, and I see clear parallels with what happened in oil between 1870 and 1885. Back then, there were hundreds of small refineries fighting each other. Prices were chaotic, quality was poor, and waste was enormous. Then a few disciplined players, including myself, began to consolidate the industry. We controlled the refining capacity, we controlled the pipelines, and we controlled the transportation. Within a decade, the chaos turned into order, and the survivors became extraordinarily powerful. The same process is beginning right now in artificial intelligence. The easy era of throwing money at any AI project is ending. Capital is becoming more expensive. Energy is becoming the dominant constraint. Only the companies and individuals who understand the new bottlenecks will thrive. And the biggest bottleneck of all in 2026 to 2028 is reliable, affordable, scalable power. I would be focusing heavily on anything related to energy infrastructure for AI. This includes nuclear power, especially small modular reactors that can be built faster near data centers, natural gas-fired plants for rapid deployment,
Long-term power purchase agreements with utilities.
companies developing advanced cooling technologies, firms that specialize in grid modernization and transmission. Whoever solves the power problem will have enormous pricing power over the entire AI stack. Just as I once had pricing power over kerosene because I controlled the refining, I would also be looking for vertical integration opportunities. In specific high-value industries, general large language models will face brutal competition and margin compression. But vertical AI solutions, for example, AI specialized in medical diagnostics, legal contract analysis, pharmaceutical drug discovery, or advanced manufacturing optimization, can maintain much higher margins because they solve expensive, painful problems that companies are willing to pay real money to fix. Another critical area is talent. During every crisis, talented people become available at much lower cost. When big tech companies start doing mass layoffs to cut expenses, that is your chance to quietly bring exceptional engineers, researchers, and operators into your own organization or investments. In my time, I built one of the strongest teams in America by hiring the best people when others were firing them. I would also keep a very close eye on distressed assets, half-finished data center projects, power generation permits that are stalled, and even entire smaller AI companies that raised money at high valuations but now cannot survive the higher cost of capital and energy. The winners of the next decade will not be the ones who rode the hype wave highest. The winners will be the ones who stayed disciplined during the cleansing phase, accumulated critical resources at reasonable prices, and built strong, vertically integrated businesses with real economic moats.
This is exactly how I turned Standard Oil from one small refinery in Cleveland into the most dominant company of its era.
The playbook has not changed, only the industry has.
Now, I want to speak directly to your mindset, because in the end, everything comes down to how you think and how you behave when fear is everywhere.
Most people believe that crises are random and unfair. I never saw them that way. To me, every major panic was a predictable outcome of human greed followed by inevitable fear. The cycle has repeated for centuries, and it will continue long after we are gone. The only variable that actually matters is how you respond when the cycle turns against you. During the darkest days of 1873 and 1907, I had one unbreakable rule: never make decisions based on emotion. When others were screaming, "Sell everything," I forced myself to ask cold, logical questions. Is this asset fundamentally valuable? Can I operate it more efficiently than the current owner? Do I have the capital and patience to hold it until the recovery comes? If the answers were yes, I bought. If not, I stayed away.
I urge you to adopt the same mental discipline in 2026.
When the next leg down comes, and it very likely will, do not panic. Do not sell quality assets just because the price is falling. Instead, ask yourself, does this company solve a real expensive problem that will still exist in 2030? Does it have a path to controlling part of the critical infrastructure, energy, data, specialized vertical applications? Can I acquire it or invest in it at a price that gives me a significant margin of safety? If you can answer these questions clearly and honestly, then fear becomes your ally instead of your enemy. Another crucial point: compounding and patience. I became truly rich not because I made one brilliant move, but because I made many good decisions over decades and let time work for me.
In this crisis, the biggest mistake you can make is expecting to get rich in 6 or 12 months. The real fortunes will be built by those who position themselves correctly now and then simply refuse to quit for the next 5 to 10 years.
I also want to address the moral question that always comes up. People called me ruthless. They said I destroyed competitors. The truth is simpler. I was more efficient, more disciplined, and more forward-thinking than they were. The market rewarded that efficiency with dominance. The same thing will happen in AI. Companies that waste energy, burn cash, and cannot show clear unit economics will die. That is not cruelty. That is progress. Your job is not to save inefficient businesses. Your job is to become so efficient and valuable that the market chooses you. Finally, understand the deepest truth I learned in my long life. Money is just a tool. Real power comes from control. Control over critical resources, control over your emotions, and control over your long-term vision. In 2026, the new sources of control are energy, data infrastructure, and specialized intelligence that solves expensive real-world problems. Those who secure these things during the current turmoil will not just survive the crisis, they will emerge as the new Rockefeller-class players of the 21st century. The storm is here. The weak are already starting to break. The question is simple. Will you be one of the weak, or will you be one of the few who uses this moment to build something that lasts for generations?
My dear friend, we have reached the end of our conversation tonight.
Let me leave you with the final, most important truth I learned across my entire life.
This crisis of 2026 is not a disaster, it is a filter.
It is filtering out the dreamers from the builders, the speculators from the owners, the weak hands from the strong. History has done this many times before, and it is doing it again right now. When the dust finally settles, and it always does, the landscape will look very different. A much smaller number of players will control a much larger share of the artificial intelligence economy, just as a small number of us once controlled the oil industry. The winners will not be those who shouted the loudest during the boom. The winners will be those who kept their heads when fear was everywhere, who preserved capital, who bought critical infrastructure and energy assets at reasonable prices, who obsessed over efficiency, and who thought in decades rather than quarters. I have walked through many such storms. 1873, 1907, and several others. Each time I emerged stronger, richer, and more dominant than before, not because I was smarter than everyone else, but because I refused to let fear or greed control my decisions I stayed disciplined when others lost their minds. I bought when blood was running in the streets. I built when others were retreating. You now have the same choice in front of you. You can join the panicked crowd, sell your positions, hide your money, and wait for better times. Or you can choose to act like a Rockefeller. Keep your powder dry, move with cold calculation, secure the new critical resources, especially energy, build vertical strength, and maintain unbreakable discipline even when the market tries to shake you out. The opportunity in front of you is rare. Great fortunes are rarely made during calm seas. They are made during storms when most people are too afraid to act. So I ask you one final question. When the blood is running on Wall Street in 2026, will you be selling in fear like the masses, or will you be quietly building the next great empire? The choice is entirely yours. If you decide to walk the harder path, the path of discipline, patience, and long-term thinking, then write in the comments below which industry or asset class you believe holds the greatest opportunity in this turmoil. Tell me where you see your future moat. I will be watching through my notes. Thank you for spending this time with an old oil man who once ruled the world through discipline and efficiency.
Remember my words always.
Crises are not catastrophes. Crises are my best friends. And if you learn to make them yours, nothing in this world will be able to stop you. Until our next conversation, stay disciplined, stay patient, and control the flow. Good night.